Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a profound and fair warning, a philosophically pretty dark journey into the mind of Arthur Schopenhauer.
Oh, definitely dark.
Yeah, this is a thinker whose ideas were so radical they caused a complete overhaul of Western philosophy. He moved all the furniture around and then basically flipped the lights off.
I'd say it was more than just a shuffle.
Hmm.
For centuries, ever since Descartes, the philosophical center of gravity had been the mind, the thinking self, the I.
Right.
Schopenhauer comes along and says, no, that is fundamentally wrong. He rips that center away from consciousness and he places it squarely in the body. And in this terrifying blind force he called the will.
And that's really the core mission of this deep dive for you, listener, to understand why he made this pivot.
This huge pivot.
Yeah. What is this blind will, and why did his conclusions lead him to believe that, existence itself is fundamentally suffering, a suffering that requires what he called the negation of life?
And we're going to look at why this really intense pessimism still resonates today. I think it's because his worldview feels so visceral. He just completely rejected the optimism of his time.
The idealism, yeah. Especially that tradition that centered everything on the rational, self-aware subject.
Exactly.
So let's start there. I mean, the prevailing thought, you had thinkers like Hegel, was that humans were primarily these rational, knowing beings, that we could understand the universe just through reason.
And Schopenhauer just said, absolutely not.
Not at all.
His counterclaim was, on the surface, deceptively simple. We are not primarily knowing beings. We are fundamentally wanting beings.
To be human is to desire, to strive.
To lack, always to lack something. And all the knowledge we gather, everything we see and hear and touch, is merely a world of representation.
The world of representation. So that's essentially the subjective projection of our own consciousness.
That's it.
Like the tree I see outside, the feeling of time passing. These are just mental images, phenomena that my own brain is creating.
Exactly. Your perception isn't reality. It's a brain phenomenon. He was actually drawing on contemporary physiological ideas, arguing that things like reason, the soul, even consciousness itself, they're all secondary. They're just shaky products of brain function.
So they're just tools the brain uses.
Right. But we make the mistake of elevating them into these independent grand realities.
It's like arguing that the map the brain draws is so convincing that we forget the terrain itself is something else entirely.
Yeah.
It really makes you question your own thought process.
And this ties into a critical insight that, came after him. Our source material connects this to someone like Karl Marx. Schopenhauer saw that we treat our mental constructs as if they were real, tangible objects.
And Marx applied that to economics.
Yeah, Marx would later say that commodities, which are just products of human labor, get this fetish character. They become these independent, almost mystical things in the marketplace.
So they both identified the same process making an abstract thing real, but one blamed the mind's illusion and the other blamed the structure of social exchange.
It just shows the power of that initial insight. We're constantly being fooled by our own creations. So if everything we perceive is just a surface phenomenon, just a design of the brain, what's actually real underneath all that?
And that brings us to his metaphysical leap.
And he uses Kant to get there.
Right. So Kant argued we can't know the world as it truly is. He said space, time, causality, they aren't external features of the universe.
No, they're innate structures in our intellect. They're a priori categories.
The fixed lenses that we have to view everything through.
Schopenhauer completely agreed with that analysis. Since space, time, and causality are subjective forms, then everything we observe in the empirical world,
The world of representation,
is inherently subjective. Even things like matter and force are just ideas we derive from these concepts.
Okay, so far so good. But Kant famously said the Ding an sich, the thing in itself, the true essence behind it all, is fundamentally unknowable. It's locked away from us.
And this is where Schopenhauer makes his revolutionary move. He says Kant was wrong. We can know the thing in itself, and we know it immediately, directly, through our body.
Wait, the body is the key to metaphysics, not abstract reason. How does that even work?
Well, think about it. When you look at your own body from the outside, it's just another object, a phenomenon in space and time.
Part of the representation.
But you also experience your body from the inside immediately. When I will my arm to move, the movement is the physical representation, but that act of willing, that's something I experience directly. It's outside the limits of my intellectual perception.
But the body is the bridge.
Yeesh.
It's the will's direct representation in the phenomenal world.
The body is objectified will.
Wow.
The moment we recognize that all our inner striving, our desires, our drives, our pain, is the fundamental reality of our being, that's when we know the thing in itself, that essence, that underlying reality of the entire universe, is the will.
And this accessible truth, I guess, brings us right to the heart of his pessimism. If the essence of all reality is this will, what exactly is it?
He defines it as a dark, blind, unconscious primary force. It's totally irrational. It exists outside of space, time, and causality, because those are just forms of our intellect.
So it's the single principle uniting everything.
The entire cosmos. It's the gravity that pulls planets. It's the instinct that guides animals. And it's the drive that motivates you and me.
A universal, ceaseless striving. And what's its ultimate goal, if it's blind?
It has no grand rational purpose. Its only relentless directive is the preservation and continuation of the species. It's a biological drive that's been given metaphysical status.
It deceives the individual to serve that goal.
Constantly. When we fall in love, for example, we think we're pursuing our own individual happiness. But for Schopenhauer, the will is just using that passion to perpetuate the species.
That just reframes every grand human ambition as, what, the frantic effort of a biological imperative. It takes all the nobility right out of it.
It does. And he grounds this in the physical reality of our bodies. He gives these stark, concrete examples. Our genital organs, they're nothing more than objectified sex drive. Our teeth and stomach are objectified hunger.
So every part of our body corresponds to an act of willing, a need to survive or feed or reproduce.
Which makes the philosophy feel so visceral,
Yeah.
right? You can feel that tension between the desiring thing and the body that manifests the desire.
And that leads directly to the core problem.
Suffering.
Suffering. Because the will is endless desire. Every satisfaction we get is just momentary.
As soon as you get what you want, a new lack is created, a new want, a new state of striving, which is suffering.
So if I achieve goal A, the will doesn't stop. It just immediately demands goal B. The relief is just the pause before the next demand.
Exactly. Existence is trapped in this brutal cycle. He famously described life as a pendulum swinging between misery and boredom.
Misery and boredom.
When we're striving and failing, we feel the misery of lack. When we actually achieve something, the will, for a moment, has nowhere to go. And that manifests as the dull, empty suffering of boredom. So we immediately have to find a new thing to strive for.
That context makes his quote, "The world is the worst world imaginable. If slightly worse, it couldn't exist." It sounds less like melodrama and more like a logical conclusion.
It's the unavoidable conclusion. If the foundation of all reality is pure, irrational, ceaseless striving, then the only moral path is to figure out how to stop it.
Which brings us to ethics. If the will is the source of all this suffering, the goal of a moral life has to be the negation of the will, the complete denial of that fundamental drive.
Right. This is the only path to what he calls spiritual salvation, or release. It's a radical rejection of life as we know it.
So true morality can't be based on, self-interest or duty or...
A hope for reward.
Mm.
It has to be utterly free from selfish motivation.
And he finds that selfless motivation in compassion or pity. Why is compassion the only foundation for true goodness?
Because compassion is the intuitive, immediate recognition of shared suffering. It's an intellectual realization, but you feel it emotionally.
Right.
It allows us to pierce the veil of the world of representation.
In other words, you stop seeing the individual person suffering.
And you start seeing the underlying will suffering, universally. He says profoundly that sufferers and those who cause suffering are the same. Compassion shows us that the principium individuationis...
That's the principle of individuation, the idea that we're all fundamentally separate people.
Exactly. It shows us that idea is just an illusion created by space and time. All suffering beings are unified by that one single underlying will. When I pity you, I see my own struggle in yours, and my ego just dissolves.
That shifts morality from a duty-based system to an immediate, felt metaphysical connection. It makes morality almost involuntary.
It does. And this is why he was so critical of his contemporaries, especially Kant. He just fiercely rejected the categorical imperative.
The idea that morality is based on rational duty.
He saw Kant's system as an appeal to an external law, and he called it enslaving ethics. He argued that even rational duty is ultimately selfish. It's motivated by fear of punishment or hope for reward.
That's a powerful challenge. For Schopenhauer, goodness has to come from the heart's immediate sympathy, not from a calculating reason.
Exactly. And the practical ethics that come from this are pretty straightforward. Negative justice, which is basically don't take what belongs to someone else to prevent harm. And human love, or caritas, to encourage help.
Hurt no one. Moreover, help everyone as much as you can.
That's his ultimate command. But, achieving this full negation of the will is incredibly hard. It requires asceticism, abstinence, a life dedicated to silencing desire.
Since most of us aren't really prepared to live a completely monastic life, are there any temporary escapes? If you can't fully negate the will, can you at least mute it for a while?
Thankfully, yes. Schopenhauer identified temporary relief in art and in the contemplation of Platonic ideas. Art is the great relief valve in his whole system.
How does art give us that temporary salvation? I mean, when I look at a painting, how am I escaping the will?
Well, when you look at a painting or listen to music, you can engage with it disinterestedly, without any self-serving purpose.
Okay.
The will is always interested in practical results, food, sex, survival. But when you contemplate art, you're just viewing the object purely, without any striving whatsoever.
So for a moment, the observer stops being a desiring, lacking individual.
Precisely. The individual dissolves and becomes a world eye, achieving a state of pure knowledge. You momentarily transcend space, time, causality. You forget your lack and your suffering. You move from the will-driven world to contemplating these eternal Platonic forms, which are the objects of true art.
Which makes the aesthetic experience profoundly philosophical.
And necessary for our sanity.
Music must have a special place in that, then. It seems to bypass the world of representation entirely.
It does. For Schopenhauer, music was the highest art form. It doesn't represent the Platonic ideas of the world. It directly represents the will itself,
So it's a direct copy of the will's inner striving.
expressed in harmony and rhythm. It lets us contemplate the essence of desire without being consumed by it.
That is a beautiful, melancholy idea. Finally, let's just touch on his enduring influence. His system might be dark, but it left a giant footprint.
Oh, it completely reshaped the modern understanding of human psychology. His concept of that dark, irrational, driving will, the thing that operates beneath our consciousness and dictates our action.
He has a direct line to Freud.
A direct and profound influence on the development of the unconscious, the Edian psychoanalysis. Most famously was Sigmund Freud.
So the id is basically Schopenhauer's will, just domesticated for psychology.
Absolutely. And what's more, his focus on the will as the single principle, uniting all life from gravity to instinct, provides a really strong metaphysical foundation for animal ethics.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, he argued fiercely against cruelty to animals, not because of utility, but because all suffering beings share the same fundamental essence, the will. For him, preventing cruelty to animals is a moral prerequisite for any true human compassion.
That connection of metaphysics to practical ethics is so powerful. So to bring it all back together for you, the listener, Schopenhauer's system really demanded that we shift our focus from the abstract mind to the physical body. He redefined the world's foundation as this blind, suffering will.
And he located true morality only in that immediate, selfless experience of shared pain, compassion.
And we should probably end with his view of history.
Right. He famously claimed that history shows no genuine progress. Instead, its slogan is the same thing in different guise. Progress is an illusion. It's just the endless, meaningless striving of the will in new political or social forms.
So if our entire existence is really dictated by this blind, irrational will and suffering is just fundamental, how does accepting that radical pessimism affect our own small strivings and goals today? If progress is a myth, what does true salvation even look like in a world where natura non contristatur nature recognizes no sorrow?
That's the question.
That is the question Schopenhauer leaves us with.